Welcome to another exciting episode of TeqTalk. I am your host Jas, and today we are having a fascinating topic lined up for you. We are diving deep into the innovative solution which is called as Bring Your Own Model in Data Cloud, a game-changing feature that is redefining how businesses can leverage data and AI together. So, as many of you already know, Salesforce has been in the forefront of empowering businesses with cutting edge features, and introduction of this bring your own model is no exception. So, this feature allows the companies to integrate their own machine learning models directly into Salesforce Data Cloud, providing flexibility and control over their data driven strategies. So, joining us today is a special guest, Jag Jasani, who is an expert in this field and works closely with Salesforce Data Cloud and AI initiatives. So, Jag has been a part of Salesforce family for nearly 4 years now, working with the core engineering team that has been the heart of developing some of the most innovative solutions in data and AI space. So today, Jag will share his journey, challenges faced, some great success stories, and much more in data and AI space. Welcome, Jag. Pleasure to have you with us today.
It's good to see you as well, Jas. Thanks for hosting us. I'm excited.
Thank you. Jag, you have been with Salesforce for almost 4 years now, deeply involved in core engineering team. So that's an impressive tenure, especially in such rapidly evolving field. Can you share a little bit about yourself and about your journey with Salesforce, specifically with the massive changes and advancements you have seen in the company and technology during this tenure?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I've been at Salesforce for just under 4 years now. My journey at Salesforce began on the SMB side, where I worked with customers in professional services, communications, media, telecom, construction. It was a catch-all. It wasn't a verticalized segment, but a lot of entrepreneurial pursuits that we used to work with in SMB. I was there for 2 years or so, 2.5 years, and I moved over to the enterprise a year ago, and really enjoying it. Slightly more mature customers, larger footprints, larger challenges, global goals, and it's a totally different scale, but it's very interesting nonetheless. I work with our manufacturing, automotive, and energy customers, and then I specialize in our data and AI solutions. And as a black belt, I'm able to work on all verticals on that front. So I've had the pleasure of working with communications customers, telecom customers, some media customers as well, in addition to some of the MAE customers. To your second question, how has the go-to-market approach changed at Salesforce? How has AI disrupted the way our customers perceive software as well as the way we go to market? Significantly, to be honest with you. I think the last year and a half, I can attest for myself and my colleagues that we've all gotten more gray hairs than ever before, just because we're keeping up with the product at a breakneck pace and almost unsustainable at a certain point. I'm sure our product managers and engineers are feeling this twofold, but the reality is that it kind of like leads me to, like, in the pandemic, my parents would have been on Zoom. Like, that's not, they would have never touched a software like Zoom until the pandemic happened.
Right.
And I feel like this was the Zoom for us, where we all had to just figure it out. And all the geniuses at OpenAI and Google and stuff did a phenomenal job at democratizing this. And, even at Salesforce, as you know, right, like, our cycles are every 3 months, but with AI and data, our cycles are monthly. So we're all always kept on our toes, and we often just learn from each other something that we may have missed in a release cycle. So. But yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying it's a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work.
So today's episode is mostly about bring your own model and its benefit, which is the new feature which has been developed and launched by Salesforce. And many of our listeners are already familiar with the concept of bring your own model and its benefits on high level. However, I'm sure they are curious on the technical side of the things. Could you walk us through the architecture of bring your own model feature, and how does Salesforce Data Cloud facilitate the seamless integration between, this model in Data Cloud and the external uh, sources when they have to import in Data Cloud?
If you've been a Salesforce customer for a little while, you're aware of the fact that we've had something called Einstein Discovery for a long time. Einstein Discovery was a part of our CRM analytics solution where essentially was a declarative low code to no code model builder housed within Salesforce. And this kind of came about during our acquisition of Tableau, and we wanted to build some dashboards that were, slightly better than the standard dashboards that were more functional from the Tableau perspective. And then to go along with it, we needed something. We had the BI, but we also needed something ML. So that's what CRM analytics was. That's what Einstein Discovery was. And the product manager for that, Bobby Brill, a genius mind, a really, really cool guy. He was the product manager for Einstein Discovery, and now he's on Einstein Model Builder and Einstein Studio. Einstein Studio is essentially an ML framework, an ML platform on Data Cloud. The difference is that it is more holistic now because it is going to collect data not just from Salesforce, but anything else that's connected to Data Cloud for you to build machine learning models on, train models as well as infer models. And if you were to ask him, he'll tell you BYOM stands for two things: bring your own model and build your own model. So as you can see here, we have our Lakehouse, which is our Data Cloud. And Data Cloud is agnostic to the source of the data. So it could be data coming from Salesforce. It could be data coming from external sources like your AWS, your GCP, wherever that is. And essentially, this is where it's going to aggregate all that data into a data set that you will then train your model on, right? And you're going to train your model through various frameworks. We have linear regression, logistic, XGBoost, etc. And once you have those models built out, I can infer those models through Data Cloud being the broker between myself, my CRM user, and my model itself. That's build your own model. But we're aware, especially in the last 2-3 years, that a lot of our customers actually might have already built out models in, let's say, SageMaker or Vertex or Databricks. And those could be machine learning predictive models that they've built out. And those models may depend on sources of data that never ever touch Salesforce. And they also have machine learning engineers and data scientists that are building those models, maintaining those models over years. And sometimes with Salesforce, as you know, we're often talking to the sales, service, marketing personas, but the machine learning and data engineering personas are typically residing in a SageMaker or a Bedrock or a Databricks. How do we democratize their work and infer their amazing models for our Salesforce users? That was the idea behind Bring Your Own Model. So you can see here, once Data Cloud brings all this data in from various sources, it acts as the broker between those models that are residing, in this case, in Databricks, and Salesforce users to be able to infer those models in a declarative way, right? So in this case, for example, MLflow is one of the tools in Databricks, but you can use AutoML, you can use Mosaic as well, or even DBRX for that matter. And you're essentially building out your model and then registering those models onto an inference point. Essentially, you've set up an API where this is the model. I'm going to take X amount of inputs, and I'm going to spit out a Y output. Now, we want to make sure we can connect to that API and through Data Cloud in a secure way so that your data is still secure. And two, in a way that a Salesforce user doesn't have to go to Databricks to get an answer on a prediction, right? So that's been the motive behind Einstein Studio and Model Builder. Very long-winded answer. I apologize, but I hope.
No, that's okay. That's very impressive, and that's very knowledgeable insight you have shared. And Jack, would you also like to share on what machine learning frameworks and model types are currently supported by BYOM? And are there any plans to expand the list of these frameworks like TensorFlow, PyTorch, etc.?
Yeah. So with Build Your Own Model, where you're building it in Einstein Studio, we have a ton of great models that make sense for sales and service use cases. So we have linear regression models, we have logistic regression models, we have XGBoost as well. So you can definitely use these models to build your own model in Model Builder. And if that suffices, great. But if you've already built out models externally, and then you're not limited to any of the models we're serving, because at that point, all that's happening on the Databricks side. So if you've got PyTorch, if you're using Hugging Face for some AI models, if you're using any of the other frameworks, like, I mean, Databricks has a ton of them themselves, but Hugging Face, PyTorch, TensorFlow, any of those frameworks that are being used in Databricks can still be served onto an endpoint. At that point, Data Cloud doesn't care which framework was used to build the model. They just have an input and an output that they're going to broker between the sales user and
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So when we have to bring the model from outside, it could be of any framework, doesn't matter. Yeah,
that's
and
right.
when we have to build the model, then there is a list of frameworks which
Mhm.
can be used to build the model.
Exactly. And I think it's important to also highlight the value.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to use an anecdote here. Like, I don't know if this ever actually happened, but if you have been paying attention to the news, you've heard about Google looking to acquire HubSpot, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was common knowledge, and it wasn't something that's insider information. And it's because Google, as an example, has built out a really, really good lake house and a warehouse, right? And if it's
Right.
also built out like Vertex AI, it's built out some really good models.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you front end that experience to the end user? In which case, this is a sales user, service user. They were probably missing that part. And so they have all this magic with the amazing models that you can build on Vertex. But to serve it onto an SDK and then have it be interactive and be secure is a huge, huge task. And this
That's
is kind of where Data Cloud has always wanted to be, is this like last mile solution that helps you broker information between external sources and Salesforce, offer some transformations, offer frameworks like BYOL, and
mm-hmm.
also offer declarative model builders on platform, as well as the ability to connect to external ones. So that therefore, the data scientists that have built incredibly good models in your Databricks and your Snowflake and your Vertex are able to get some value out of it, because your sales and service users are actually going to tap into those to make business decisions, right?
Exactly. So I think it's one stop shop where you can do everything together. It is integrated in a seamless manner with different platforms, and you can do analysis, and all the data driven decisions can be taken further. So definitely it's an add on. So this new feature I'm personally very fond of, because we have used it in a couple of places and it's working like a charm, I would say.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and let's move on to another question where I would like to understand more on bring your own model capabilities, like real time data processing and predictions.
Mhm.
Would you like to discuss more on how, if there is a capability of getting batch predictions or streaming predictions? Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. So on to the left here, before I go into my demonstration,
yeah.
I just want to show a multitude of ways you can invoke these models.
Mm-hmm.
So as you mentioned earlier, we have both batch and streaming prediction jobs. So Data Cloud is going to aggregate all the data onto a data model object. And that data model object may consist data from your Salesforce, your ERP, perhaps a third like a POS system. And once you've achieved all that into it, you've aggregated that all into a DMO, then I'm able to invoke the model through batch or streaming,
Right.
depending on the urgency of how often you're looking to invoke those models, depending on the use case and the business value. We offer that flexibility. But we also offer you the flexibility to just invoke it through something you've known for a long time, which is flows, right? So
Yeah,
you're
this is
essentially
pretty
just building
interesting.
up.
Thanks for talking about this.
Yeah, no worries. It's honestly, we're learning it as we go as well, but like it's super powerful. If you
Mm-hmm.
remember in Einstein Discovery, we used to have that Lightning Web Component,
Yes.
right, where it offers a score and offers the next best things you can do. Essentially, you can kind of build that same thing out through a flow, and so you can invoke that model endpoint through Model Builder in Flow, and
Mm-hmm.
then surface that up to an end user. In fact, you can also trigger other things that are going to kick off based on the result of that flow, right? So that's the benefit of it.
So Jack, could you just demo us if you have the system ready, and it'll be really valuable for all our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a Salesforce user, this user interface should look very familiar to you. And through this interface, you click on the waffle icon and then head over to Data Cloud, which is what I've done here. Once you head over to Data Cloud, on your tabs here, you'll notice Einstein Studio. Einstein Studio is that model registry that we were talking about. And you'll notice here that I've already got a bunch of models already built out. You can see SageMaker's in here. I've also got some models built out in Einstein here, which is our local build your own model solution. And then we have also connected to Databricks here. And that's essentially how I house my models and how I maintain my models. So why is this valuable? Because some data science teams may be residing in SageMaker, some may be in Vertex, some may be in Databricks. I'm able to bring all those models and kind of manage them here in one place. So how do I do that? Simply click add a new predictive model. And this is where I could either select if I'm building a model from scratch, this will be using Einstein Studio, or if I'm going to just connect to an external model. And you'll notice here, as I start working through that, all I'm doing is selecting the data that's going into training that model. And that's where that Data Cloud DMO comes in.
Yes.
So fast forward to once I've built out this model, or I've already hosted this model, to the earlier question about batch and streaming. So you'll see here, as an example, let's jump into a model that's already built out. In this case, bring your own model with Databricks. So I've got a churn prediction model where essentially we have customers that have some loyalty information in Salesforce, but the data science team is working out of Databricks, and they're building out a model for churn prediction there. So you'll see here that they've essentially taken a model and served it to an endpoint. It's a predictive model that's been served to an endpoint, and once I set that up once, I don't have to do it again. Then I can deactivate it, but the authentication is just one time, which is valuable because then I don't have to keep connecting back and forth.
Right, that makes sense.
And in the Databricks side, it's also important to know that with Databricks, as an example, this could be SageMaker or anything else, the actual model is built out using AutoML or Mosaic, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But then the compute you assign to it will depend on how often you're going to infer that model. So this is going to be a model that's going to reside on a POS at a retail store, and each retail employee on checkout is going to suggest, let's say, signing up for the newsletter based on this model. You better believe you need some good compute behind that. But if this is going to be something that's going to predict a marketing campaign that goes out every month, I don't know if it's valuable for you to refresh that model every day. So as a result, the compute you assign to it will depend on your use case, and that compute will be assigned to the model registry at the source, which is in this case Databricks. So in this case, you'll see here, I've got my model, which I've then served to an endpoint. And this endpoint has some compute assigned to it. So it's a CPU small, really small DB compute assigned to it because I'm just using it for a demonstration.
Yeah.
But this gives me the flexibility to throttle it up and down, as well as how often do I want to keep it on at all times, or do I want to shut it down after 60 minutes, whatever that may be. And I'm able to manage all the metrics here. But this is the endpoint that's being called here in Data Cloud, so that now I can run my batch and streaming prediction jobs. So you can see here I've got two prediction jobs active, but really simply, all I'm doing here is I'm setting up some cadence to how I want this prediction to be refreshed. So here is how I'm mapping the requirements of this model back to the actual model itself, the actual results itself. So here, as you can see, this model requires, let's say, 10 or so inputs, and it's going to give me those outputs. In here, when I go into Inference Builder, this is how I'm going to map it back to that data.
Okay, so you're mapping it back to the DMO.
I'm shaping what's the serving endpoint is going to require to this here in Data Cloud.
Yeah, to Data Cloud in Any specific DMO might not be the DMO which we are using to input the data.
Correct. So you see here, these are the fields that I have in my DMO.
Yeah.
And I know that this particular model requires um, these endpoints. I mean, these parameters. So this is where I would map those so that, because Data Cloud is a broker between the two,
Right.
right? So here are my inputs. Here's the requirements of the endpoint. That's where I do the mapping. So this is my data. This is where the data is coming from. And here's what it needs to be mapped to. So tier needs to be mapped to tier. Gender needs to be mapped to gender. And the data types are very important as well. So it can be sensitive to, like, if it's an integer or if it's a string, right? But that's going to make a difference. So this is how I would set up my batch or my streaming prediction jobs.
So when we say streaming, so is it like completely real time and there is no lag? What is the time or what is the latency when how much time we can expect the data to be brought back in Data Cloud?
That will depend on again on the endpoint itself. So how much load can it bear? And if there's
Do we
going to
have
be
any threshold that, okay, these many parameters can be sold or these many API requests can only go and beyond which it will delay the performance, or do we have any threshold?
That's a good question. From the Data Cloud side, because it's just consumption based, you're just going to be consuming more credits.
Yeah.
And Data Cloud is serverless in that regard. Like, we are not offering customers, like, we're not asking customers to manage the compute. It'll just come back down to the inference point. So how much ever the inference point can manage is what the answer will be to that, because it's just offloading the compute there.
Yeah.
The actual computation isn't happening in Data Cloud at all. Right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
what comes out of this, right? Like, so you've got these predictions. Essentially, all those results have to come back to a DMO.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see here in my DMOs, it will return back all my predictions into a DMO itself. So churn prediction, where'd it go? Churn prediction. So the results return back in this prediction, which can then be used for activation, segmentation, marketing campaigns, etc. Right?
Jag, I have a quick question. So, uh, can Data Cloud support things like getting the models and predictions from multiple external sources? For example, SageMaker and then Databricks and Vertex AI. For example, these three are there, and Data Cloud is fetching predictions from these three. And can Data Cloud, on top of these three predictions, take actions together?
Great point. So if I understand correctly, let's suppose I have a loyalty prediction
Yeah,
that's built out of SageMaker.
right.
I've got a churn, no, not churn and loyalty, the same thing. I have a loyalty prediction based out of SageMaker. I have an upsell prediction built on Vertex.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a, I don't know, merchandise, like a cart recommendation prediction built out in Databricks. Once it lands in Data Cloud, then I can set up a logic that's going to fire based on the results of all three.
Yeah.
Which is why it being the broker is important, because the action is taking place in Salesforce, right? So it doesn't care as to where that prediction comes from. In the flow, you can bring predictions for all three and set up some logic, for example, that, hey, if the prediction for churn is low, meaning that the customer is not likely to churn, and they have X amount of items in the cart, let the recommendation system fire. But don't recommend something if the customer is already annoyed that we keep upselling them, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you can have these two work in tandem at the interaction layer, which is Data Cloud.
Yeah. So in short, Data Cloud has the capability of holding and providing infrastructure for any model coming from the supported hyperscalers.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. And I can see that scaling is again not a problem, but I would like to understand from you that what are the best practices for optimizing the performance? And as this is completely consumption based model, what do you think would be the best ways organizations should start looking into before actually implementing? And the enterprises, they run in scale, right? So
Yeah.
what are the best practices they should take care before actually implementing it?
Yeah. That's a very good question, and that's honestly a question that we get asked from customers all the time, and and this may seem like a cop out answer, but the real answer honestly is start with the business problem first. If the business problem warrants X amount of refreshes every day, then quantify the impact of that business problem and work backwards from there. Don't let technology be the limiter in your business solution, because be that with Data Cloud or be that with SageMaker, Databricks, if the problem is large enough, you will find a computer large enough to solve the problem. Then it's up to you to play that delicate dance between consumption and savings or revenue generated from that model, as an example.
Right.
So, as an example, I'll give you. We were with a customer. We were talking with a customer last week with Bring Your Own Model. They built out some really, really advanced models in Databricks,
Mm-hmm.
and they had the same questions like, okay, what should be the refresh rate? And I would ask them, well, how often do you need to refresh it, and how often are you making a decision based on that model? Great. If you're doing it once a day, cool. What is the value of that? So if you didn't use the model versus if you use the model, what is the value that the model brings? Because it doesn't matter at that point what the technology is. Is it a 10% uplift in revenue, 5% uplift in revenue? Cool. What is your average cart size? Is it $1,000? If so, that's 10%. It's $100 for every time you hit the model. Then let's work backwards from there. How much is that model going to cost you to hit? Your
Right.
Databricks costs, your AWS costs, and your Salesforce costs. If it's less than $100, then there's nothing that should stop you from doing it. Right? So oftentimes with hyperscalers, that's why they're all trying to go serverless, because
Mm-hmm.
they want customers to think about the business problem and less about infrastructure. Databricks just released this as well. Is that they're trying to go as serverless on their SQL warehouse as possible. But the consumption model for Data Cloud is available to public. So our rate card has all the different types of queries you can run, including BYOL, BYOM. So we have a rate card that shows how all the credits are broken down. Then you just have to map it back to business value.
Yeah. So we have been asked a lot about how do we consume, how do we track our consumption. So that's the biggest problem right now, because there isn't any consumption wallet. I know that consumption wallet is the thing which is already GA now, or it is coming in the future. But that is really a great thing, great initiative, great feature, which is going to help all the customers to track down their whole spending, and that's how they can also start working towards starting slow and
Yes,
just start backwards, like how you mentioned.
exactly.
Yeah. So my next question is regarding the security and compliance, right? So we are getting model from outside, we are building model using different frameworks, we are fetching in things from here and there. How does Salesforce ensure that security is at top priority and compliance of data is still number one? So would you like to discuss about the measures which are in place to protect the sensitive data?
Yes. So with when this whole AI boom happened, right? Let's say a
Right.
couple of years ago, a lot of enterprises were quite concerned about, well, this is great, but how do I apply this to my enterprise data? Right? Valid question. Um, I don't know if you caught this like really interesting interview with the CTO of OpenAI, but the interviewer point blank asked her, "Were you training your models on YouTube?" And it's a tough interview to watch, because the reality is, like, she may have just not known, but the reality is, like, enterprises care about the security of their data, about their customers. So Salesforce took a more conservative approach when they were going to market with this, And rightfully so, because at the end of the day, trust is our number one value, because our customers trust us with data on the cloud. And as a result, we release what we call this Einstein Trust Layer. And the trust layer applies to anything on our AI applications. So take an example. You have some data in Salesforce that you want to run it through an LLM, as an example, right? And you want the LLM to generate you an email based on the data, but how do you enrich that prompt with that data? And through that secure gateway with our trust layer, that's exactly what's happening. So it's I'm creating a prompt asking my LLM to craft me an email to persuade this customer to buy this quarter. It needs to first retrieve data from my CRM that's relevant to this customer so that the LLM can come up with a smart response. What that data is depends on you. It could just be high-level information like their name, industry, address, or it could be previous opportunities, products they own, any cases that they may have open with us, and dynamically grounding it with that data. But then, we want to make sure that there are some data points that are just masked because it's sensitive data. So even though there is a zero retention policy with our LLM partners like OpenAI, we still want to mask that data before it hits that endpoint, because it doesn't matter if there's a zero retention policy. That data should never, it doesn't add any value to the customers, to the actual quality of the email. So let's mask that data. That's the first step. Then, as you can see here, going through the secure gateway, that zero retention policy kicks in, meaning that none of the data that's fed into the LLM is used to train that LLM. It stays within the boundary of Salesforce. Now we actually released the Trust Layer dashboard. I'm not sure if you saw it, Jas, but that's also something that just came out. So you essentially have an audit trail of all the LLM transactions that have taken place.
Oh, wow. Is it already GA or?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So a customer can view an audit trail in real time of every time that LLM was hit, how many calls, which feature was used for that LLM, and also toxicity detection. So this is important too, because how do you make sure that your internal user isn't asking for an email to be generated that may have elements of, let's say, sexism or racism or something inappropriate, right? And that toxicity detection is working on the LLM layer as well. So once the response comes back, Einstein is scanning through that response to make sure there's nothing inappropriate said in that response. And also, I actually tested this just the other day. I was trying it out. Even when you ask it to do something on its way out to the LLM, it's going to block you from asking questions that may be inappropriate.
Yeah, I think this is very important. Security is one of the topmost things which should be taken care by all the organizations and any product. So, Jack, would you like to have a quick demo on the flow and actions which you were talking about?
Yeah, sure. So, all this while we've been talking about, the value and the beauty of all this. Let's actually see it in action.
Yeah.
So as a sales user in Salesforce, you may be working with a customer like Lauren Bailey as an example, okay? Lauren Bailey has been an active customer. She actually is a monthly subscriber to your service. And what I'm interested in is this customer going to churn? This is someone that's been my customer for a long time. And if so, I need all my actions to take that into account when I'm working with Lauren. So if I take a look at Lauren here as an example, Lauren has a likelihood to churn. So this prediction is coming in straight from Databricks, and this is coming in through Model Builder and Einstein Studio. And this is where Data Cloud acts as a broker. As a sales user, this is a cause for concern for me. So she's going to churn. If I look at her loyalty metrics here as an example, I can see that she pays a monthly fee of $15. Her sentiment's been negative lately, and she's not been really engaged. But she's been a customer for over 48 months. So, let's take an example of if I change her monthly charge. So I'm on a call with her, and let's say I change my monthly charge, and I only charge her $10 a month for the service. What now we're looking to see is, hey, how is this going to impact her churn prediction based on historical patterns? Because if I am looking to interact with Lauren and essentially figure out what my talk track is going to be, what I'm going to pitch to her, I rely on this model heavily because it's been quite accurate in the recent past.
Yeah.
And how do I have that inform my outreach? So you can see here that changing her loyalty metrics, or essentially reducing her monthly fee, has now led her to, likely not churn, which is fine. But I also want this to be taken into consideration when I'm building out an email, or I'm sending out an email to Lauren. So as you know, Prompt Builder is essentially an LLM gateway that helps you craft very, very personalized emails. But while we ship out email templates to you, you can also create your own custom email templates. These custom email templates can take into account Model Builder. So
Mhm.
the model score can inform the prompt template, which can then influence the email that's being generated by the LLM. So as an example here, I'm just going to add something here. And you'll see what's actually happening in the background. So Einstein's prompt builder is running that prompt, which is invoking the prediction model.
Mhm.
And essentially the prompt goes, hey, if the prediction of her likelihood of churn is high, then let's not pitch a product to her. If it's not high, then let's be a bit more um, salesy, let's call it, to try to sell her something. But because it knows that the prediction right now was, she was likely to churn, it's being more conservative in its approach. So we're offering an opportunity for her to share her feedback on, how we can improve, but also as a token of appreciation, offering her a 10% discount on her next purchase, so that when she makes that purchase, or when she responds back, I can go back to loyalty and reduce her monthly fee as well, so that she's not likely to churn. And then next time on the next email, I can perhaps upsell her on something.
That's truly amazing. The level of advancements and features which have come up, they are mind blowing. I mean, I have no words to say. There's so many enhancements going on, and yeah, they are just amazing. First of all, I would like to thank you so much for sharing your insights and amazing work being done. So, what are the new features and enhancements do we expect? Overall, data cloud and AI in near future.
Yeah, that's a great question. And once again, thank you for the invite on this one. It's always a lot of fun to talk to like-minded folks about data and AI. So a couple things that are coming out here. As you know, our vector database went GA about a month ago,
Mhm.
which seems like a year in AI terms, but it
I
went.
think I think I'll need to have another session with you for
Yes,
vector database as well, because you are working so closely and within the engineering team. So
sure
yeah.
thing, absolutely. Happy to talk about that. But yeah, so RAG, our RAG solution just came out, which helps you apply LLMs to unstructured data.
Yeah.
And we also, with Bring Your Own Model, you could bring predictive models as well as generative models. And we just released the ability for you to bring in Anthropic Claude on
Nice.
Amazon. So if you have customers, will typically go one of two ways. They'll either go the RAG approach, where they're augmenting the LLM, the prompt with unstructured data, or they will fine tune an existing LLM. A lot of financial services customers, as an example, will go the fine tuning route
Hmm.
because they want an LLM that's very specific to the FINS area as well as for security purposes. So you can also bring that model in and still apply the trust layer to that. And so that's something that's very exciting. I'm excited to see and talk to customers that are looking to fine tune or bring fine tuned models into Salesforce, and then apply things like prompt templates, like Copilot, using their LLM.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Jag. And it's been a pleasure having you on the show and diving into the world of Salesforce and its innovative features. So, your insights into the bring your own model and other AI things have really enlightened me and all our viewers, I would say. So, thank you for sharing your expertise and making this episode full of information and fun.
Thank you, Jas. Really appreciate it, and look forward to many more of these.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Tech Talk. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it as insightful as we did. Stay tuned for more engaging discussions and experts' insights. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and take care. Thank you.